So today I'm going to be showing you how to write an outline. And it's a very quick process. It only takes me about 20 minutes or so to write a full outline, but I will say that this is going to be for nonfiction books only. Writing an outline for a fiction book, as I'm finding out, is a whole different beast of its own. I recently just started working on a fiction project. I had this idea for a fiction trilogy, and the outline is the bane of my existence right now, but I'm figuring it out. But the nonfiction outlines, however, piece of cake. So I'm going to show you how to do that today. First things first is you got to have a topic, right? You got to know what your book's about. And typically when someone says that they want to be an author, they already kind of have an idea of what kind of books they would write. They have an idea for what they want their book to be about. If you don't, then that's the first thing you need to figure out. And I would even encourage you to just ask yourself, like, why you want to be an author in the first place. What message do you feel like you have to share with the world? Because that's the goal of authors everywhere, right? Is we feel like we have something that would be of benefit to the world around us if we wrote it down and got it out there. Maybe it's a message that we want to share. Maybe we've learned some lessons that we want to help other people learn. There's a lot of different things that can be shared in a nonfiction book. So you have to just kind of peel back the layers and really deep dive on why you want to write a book in the first place and what you want that book to be about. Now, I will say that sometimes people will say things like, well, I just want to write down my story. And that's fantastic because everyone has a story. Everyone can write a story. But I will say that unless you have a message in that story, if your only purpose is to just write an autobiography or a memoir or a tell-all of some sort, it may not perform as well. And I say that because people want to know things about the lives of celebrities or influencers or people who, we look up to, we aspire to be like, but very few people are going to purchase a book about someone's story if they don't know anything about that person to begin with. So if your only goal is to write your story, you may have a more difficult time marketing it and getting it out there to the public and convincing people to want to read it, unless you have some sort of message behind it, some sort of lesson that people can learn from it, or if it's just a crazy, insane story that is like something that should be on a true crime podcast or something. So once you figured out your topic, then you're going to want to kind of break the outline down even further. So the way that I do this is usually I'll have a topic come to mind and I'll already have a working title of some sort. The titles have never been really difficult for me to figure out. I just kind of go with what the message is. So for example, with this last book, my last book that I just published is called Leaving Defeat. I'll show it to you. This is my newest book, Leaving Defeat. And so I called it Leaving Defeat because the message is about leaving defeat. And the tagline even says, illuminating the path to victory. So this book is all about how God walked me out of a place of feeling defeated, feeling like I was hopeless, like I was worthless in these certain areas in my life, and walking me into a place of victory. So the title was very self-explanatory, very easy for people to understand. The tagline gives even more of a clue of what the book's about. So I wouldn't get too hung up on the title just yet. Just get something that you can work with. So maybe you're writing a book about finances. Maybe you're writing a book about how you want to teach people how to handle their money so that they can make it grow. So maybe your working title could be How to Make Your Money Grow. Simple as that. You don't have to get too crazy, creative with it at first. You can always change it later, but just have a working title that you can kind of plug into your projects so you'll know which project you're actually working on. The next thing that I like to do is break down my subcategories. So after I have an idea for a book, that's typically when I like to research. I'll take what I already know about this subject and I will continue to learn about it. because the one piece of advice that I give people is don't write about something you don't understand. If you are trying to write about something that you don't understand just so that you can look smart or look knowledgeable or look like an expert, people are going to be able to sniff that out. Write clear and concisely about what you understand, and someone's going to benefit from that because not everyone has the same knowledge that you do. So that's my best piece of advice, is to just make sure you understand it yourself. So usually I'll take all of my research and all of my notes and I'll start rereading through it and just kind of pick out the patterns that I'm noticing. Okay, I'm noticing a pattern around this specific subject, so let me make that a category. I'm noticing a pattern around this, so let me make that a category. And typically these categories that I section my notes into become the chapters. And so if I'm noticing that, oh, I wrote a lot in my notes about transformation, so let me put that as a chapter. There's going to be a chapter on transformation. I'm seeing a lot in my notes about people pleasing, so maybe there's a chapter on people pleasing, et cetera, et cetera. And I have been known to add chapters after the project's already done. Again, you don't have to get rigid with it. This is not set in stone. This is not something that can't be changed later. The whole purpose of writing the outline is to get something down that gives you a guideline that you can work with as you write. So don't overthink it. Don't overcomplicate it. Just kind of start picking out, okay, what are my subjects that I'm speaking of that fall under the umbrella of this one big topic? So once you have your chapters, and maybe you just have a few, that's okay. But once you have categories that represent your chapters, what I like to do is break it down even further. And I'll have 3 to 4 subheadings per chapter. You don't actually have to put subheadings in your chapter, but this just gives you kind of an organized flow where when you start writing, okay, first I'm going to talk about transformation and how it's optional. Okay, I'm using my latest book as an example because this is literally what I did last time. So I have a whole chapter on transformation. I broke it down on, okay, transformation is optional. And then I talked about how transformation is achievable. And then I talked about how, I don't even remember. Let's look at it. I'll just break it down. Chapter 1 is called transformation. So the first subheading that I did is transformation is necessary, then transformation is achievable, and then transformation is optional. Those are the 3 subheadings that I did in that chapter that helped me to kind of keep my thoughts organized as I was writing. So as I began writing the subheading on transformation being necessary, I knew that the next part was that it was achievable. So it allowed me to put my words in order in a way that pointed to the thing that was coming next. It was kind of like, okay, this makes sense. This helps the story flow. You don't have to put subheadings in the actual chapter, but again, it just gives you a way to follow the flow. Because sometimes when you sit down to write, you'll be sitting there and you're like, okay, I could go 3 different directions with this topic. I could take it this direction. I could go this way. Which way do I want to go? And by having these subheadings already laid out for you, and you've already read over the outline, you know that you like it, then when you actually sit down to write, it makes the process so much easier. So once I have all of those things organized and ready to go, what I like to do is write it on sticky notes. So I have different colored sticky notes, which is important to me. It helps my brain a lot. I'm a very, very visual person. Okay. So being able to visualize things, to look at it, to picture it, and to play around with it is super, super helpful for my creative brain. So if you have a creative brain like me, I would definitely recommend getting multiple colored sticky notes. And then I do what I call the poster board method. I don't remember if I saw this somewhere or if I just came up with it. I truly don't remember. If I knew that I saw it somewhere, I'd try to find it and give credit to the person who came up with it. I'm sure I'm not the first one who's done this, but this is the poster board method, okay? This is what I did for my last book. I have Leaving Defeat, the title of my book, up there, and then I have all these different colored sticky notes. So the pink sticky notes are the chapter titles. So I have Transformation, Unpacking Your Bag, and then all of these others. And then you see I have the yellow sticky notes. These are my subheadings. These are my points that I'm going to talk about throughout the chapters. So what this allowed me to do was put it all on one sheet of paper, put it all on a poster board, and then I could rearrange it to organize it in a way that made sense and that flowed. So if I said, actually, I think this sticky note needs to go up here. Let's see if that flows a little better. And then I'd reread over it, and you just kind of play around with it until you get the flow that makes sense for the story. Because even in nonfiction books, you're still telling a story. And that's one thing that I like for people to understand. You're not writing a textbook. I mean, you could. Not many people enjoy reading textbooks for fun, but you could. But if you don't want it to read like a textbook, you still have some sort of a story and some sort of a flow to it that makes it an enjoyable reading experience. Because it's not just about what I want to write as an author. It's about, what do people need to read? What do people need to understand? How can I better help them understand it, right? So by drafting an outline this way, it kind of helps you keep in line with that concept of telling a story that someone's actually going to read. This is going to set you up for success so that when you get ready to market your book, you have an easier way to talk about it because there is a story structure there. And I can talk a little bit more about the actual writing process and how I plug in personal stories and examples and analogies to kind of keep the story lively and things of that nature. But I just wanted to do a quick video to help y'all understand how to draft an outline for a nonfiction book that is not overwhelming and that's actually really, really easy and simple. Like I said, I can draft an outline in 20 minutes or less, no problem, if I have an idea already ready to go. So it's really simple. Don't overcomplicate it. You can always add to it later. You can always take away from it later. This is not set in stone. This is just giving you something that you can work with. It's just giving you some blueprints for your story so that when you sit down to write, it is not a headache and a half. So hope that was helpful for y'all. I am about to hop off of here and go get my kiddos. But join me again next time. I'm sure I'll be talking a little more about the writing process, and that may be a little bit of a longer video because that's very involved. But we'll talk about the whole process of writing the actual book and what steps come after that. So I hope you'll join me next time. See you then.